Yes. Hi.
So we were talking about the magic book. I'm doing all the homework, doing
और
the
जब
10
टाइम कहाँ मिल रहा है सबके लिए बिकॉज इसका भी होमवर्क बहुत सारा है. The 7 habits of highly effective people.
हाँ, so हम 7 habits का होमवर्क नहीं कर रहे हैं, बट
इसमें
यू
ज्यादा
नो
कुछ है नहीं,
माय
आप मैजिक में इनकॉर्पोरेट कर सकते हो, पता है.
हाँ, सो मैजिक का होमवर्क आई एम डूइंग.
तो आप मैजिक का होमवर्क कर रहे हो ना, ग्रैटिट्यूड कर रहे हो, तो ग्रैटिट्यूड करोगे तो आपको अपनी वैल्यूज बहुत क्लियरली दिख जाएंगी उसमें.
हम्म हम्म
उन वैल्यूज को पकड़ लेना, उसमें से सर्कल कर लेना, और उन वैल्यूज को जो नोटबुक में लिख रहे हो ना, उसका पर्सनल
ओके
विजन स्टेटमेंट बना लेना.
ओके
अब पर्सनल मिशन स्टेटमेंट बना रहे तो रोल्स और गोल्स ना, अपने रोल्स भी लिख लेना. जब आप ग्रेटिट्यूड लिखोगे तो आपको पता चल जाएगा विच रोल्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू यू, विच आर शोइंग अप. याद किया तो उसमें आप जैसे वो बनाते हो ना, आपका ड्रीम लिस्ट.
हम्म.
याद किया तो अपने ड्रीम लिस्ट से मैचिंग होते हुए गोल्स लिख लेना हर उस ब्लॉक में. आपका वीकली शेड्यूल रेडी हो जाएगा.
सो दी पर्सनल मिशन स्टेटमेंट वो सिंगल लाइन का होएगा कि इट कुड
डजंट
बी
मैटर, आपको
फाइव
जिस
सिक्स
तरह से
लाइन्स.
लिखना है, आपको जिस तरह से लिखना है, इट इज फॉर यू.
ओके.
एंड इट विल बी ये अपन इसको अपने कॉन्शियसनेस में, प्रेजेंस में, अवेयरनेस में रखेंगे ना. कुछ
हम्म
भी लिखकर आप दीवार पे चिपका देना, तो आप उसको
हम्म
क्या बार बार रिफाइन करते जाओगे ओवर द टाइम.
हम्म
बस उसको अपने अवेयरनेस में अपने आगे रखना, क्यों बार बार आपको
हाँ.
दिखता रहे.
हम्म. तो
दैट्स इट.
आज एक तो आज एक 20 रुपए के नोट में मैंने लिखा कि आई एम थैंकफुल ऑफ all the money that has been given to me, and I put it on my display board in the
वेरी
office.
वेरी ब्यूटिफुली, वेरी ब्यूटिफुल. यू कैन शेयर दैट इन आवर व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप फॉर पीपल.
um मैं कल भेज दूंगा.
परफेक्ट.
हम्म.
टुडे वी विल बी डूइंग पैराडाइम्स ऑफ इंटरडिपेंडेंस. अभी
ओके.
अपन ने हैबिट नंबर 1 2 3 की, जिसमें अपन इमोशनली, मेंटली, फिजिकली, अपने
हम्म
सर्कमस्टेंसेस,
हम्म
अपने लोगों से, अपने
हम्म
मतलब सिचुएशन से कैसे आइडेंटिटी को सेपरेट किया अपने, और उनमें
हम्म
सिचुएशन में कहाँ से अपन को अप्रोच करना है वो अपन ने सीख लिया.
हम्म
Right? The habit number 1, being proactive. Only focus on things which you can control. Number 1. Habit number 2 was creating, visualizing, uh,
हम्म
and creating a personal mission statement. कौन सी
हम्म
values है which are important to you, and you will
हम्म
come from that.
हम्म
Gratitude is one of the
हम्म हम्म
no matter what, I will come
हम्म
from a feeling of being grateful,
हम्म
being positive outlook, or
हम्म
something like that.
हम्म
And the third habit we learned was about prioritization,
हम्म
setting priorities, and
हम्म
setting what is one thing in each area of your life which we want. If we do that this week,
हम्म
that's that we will be ahead. So
हम्म
habit 3 mein apan ne sikha, it's not about doing and being busy
हम्म
and working very 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 hard. It's about prioritization and giving those priorities time, and learning to say no to things which are not important in life, or not that important, that can be delegated, that can be avoided, that can be managed by some way or the other, by not devoting a lot of time to them.
हम्म
So we are learning to prioritize and focus. So those are the best 3 practices.
हम्म
First, the habits which we develop, and now we will learn the paradigms of interdependence, because now we have learned the habits of independence, which is like
हम्म
not drawing our identity from situations. We
हम्म
can be interdependent. That means we can collab with people. We can
हम्म
be with society.
हम्म
There can be no friendship without confidence, and no confidence without integrity. There
हम्म
can be no friendship without confidence, and no confidence without integrity.
हम्म हम्म
Just a minute. Before moving into the area of public victory, we should remember that effective interdependence can only be built on the foundation of true independence, which is private victory precedes public victory, which we have learned through focusing and weekly scheduling and personal mission statement. Algebra always comes before calculus. They have tried to jump into an effective relationship without the maturity, strength of character, and to maintain them. अगर अपन maturity, strength of character or integrity नहीं लाएंगे तो we won't be able to manage the interdependence, because we will be reacting to
Hmm.
situations and people, and we will be drawing our identity from the circumstances. अरे
Hmm.
इसने ऐसे कैसे बोल दिया मेरे बारे में, अरे मैं तो ऐसा नहीं हूँ, अरे तो then we will be reactive, right? We will not be coming from the mission, personal mission statement or values such as ki, it is not about being Gaurav or Richa or Anishka or anybody. It's about this thing getting done, or this being done, which is like the value of honesty being honored, or the value of compassion being honored, or the value of being grateful being honored. It's not about Gaurav or Richa or Meet or Anishka or Naveen or etc. Right? But you just can't do that. You simply have to travel the road. You can't be successful with other people if you haven't paid the price of success with yourself. If you haven't paid the price of success with yourself. A few years ago, when I was giving a seminar on the Oregon coast, a man came up to me and said, "You know, Stephen, I really don't enjoy coming to these seminars." He had my attention. "Look at everyone here, else here," he continued. "Look at this beautiful coastline and the sea out there and all that's happening. And all I can do is sit and worry about the grilling I'm going to get from my wife tonight on the phone. She gives me the third degree every time I'm away. Where did I eat breakfast? Who else was there? Was I meeting all morning? Where did we stop for lunch? Where did I do during lunch, etc., etc." And what she really wants to know, but never quite ask, is who she can call to verify everything I tell her. She just nags me and questions everything I do when I'm away. He did look pretty miserable. We talked for a while and then he made a very interesting comment. "I guess she knows all the questions to ask," he said a little sheepishly. "It was at seminar like this that I met her when I was married to someone else." I considered the implication of his comment and then said, "You're a kind of into quick fix, aren't you?" He said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you did like to take a screwdriver and just open up your wife's head and rewire the attitude of hers really fast, wouldn't you?" "Sure, I did like her to change," he exclaimed. "I don't think it's right for her to constantly grill me like she does." "My friend," I said, "you can't talk your way out of problems you behave yourself into." My friend, you can't talk your way out of problems you behave yourself into. We are dealing with a very dramatic and very fundamental paradigm shift here. You may try to lubricate your social interactions with personality techniques and skills, but in the process, you may trun- truncate the vital character base. You can't have the fruits without the roots. It's the principle of sequencing. Private victory precedes public victory. Self mastery and self discipline are the foundation of good relationship with others. Some people say that you have to like yourself before you like others. I think that idea has merit, but if you don't know yourself, if you don't control yourself, if you don't have mastery over yourself, it's very hard to like yourself, except in some short term, psych up, superficial way. Real self respect comes from dominant over self, from true independence. That's the focus of habit 1, 2, and 3. Independence is an achievement. Interdependence is a choice only independent people can make. Unless we are willing to achieve real independence, It's foolish to try to develop human relation skills. We might try. We might even have some degree of success when the sun is shining. But when the difficult times come, we won't have the foundation to keep things together. Private victory precedes public victory. Self mastery and self discipline are the foundation of good relationship with others. The most important ingredient we put into any relationship is not what we say or what we do or what we are, but what we are. And if our words and our actions come from superficial human relation techniques, which is the personality ethic, rather than from our own inner core, others will sense that duplicity. We simply won't be able to create and sustain the foundation necessary for effective interdependence. The techniques and skill that really makes a difference in human interactions are the ones that almost naturally flow from truly independent character. So the place to begin building any relationship is inside ourselves, inside our circle of influence, our own character. As we become independent, proactive, centered in correct principles, value driven, and able to organize and execute around the priorities in our life with integrity, we then can choose to become interdependent, capable of building rich, enduring, highly productive relationship with other people. As we look at the terrain ahead, we see that we are entering a whole new dimension. Interdependence opens up worlds of possibilities for deep, rich, meaningful associations, for geometrically increased productivity, for serving, for contribution, for learning, for growing. But it is also where we feel the deepest pain, the greatest frustration, the greatest roadblocks to happiness and success. And we are very aware of that pain because it is acute. We can often live for years with chronic pain of lack of vision, leadership, or management in our personal lives. We feel vaguely uneasy and uncomfortable and occasionally take steps to ease the pain, at least for a time. Because the pain is chronic, we get used to it, we learn to live with it. But when we have problems in our interactions with other people, we are very aware of the acute pain. It is often intense and it won't go away. That's when we try to treat the symptoms with quick fixes and techniques and band-aids of the personality ethics. ये बोल रहा है कि ये कैरेक्टर के ऊपर बेस्ड है सारी रिलेशनशिप्स
Hmm.
एंड नॉट पर्सनालिटी एथिक कि मैं इस तरह से बोल लूंगा, मैं इस तरह से कर लूंगा तो वो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएगी. It's never with what you say and how you behave that the relationship is dependent on. It's on who you are
Are.
at the core, which is not even spoken, is where the relationships are built. Now, as we think of effective interaction with others, let's go back to our earlier definition of effectiveness. We said it's P and PC balance, the fundamental concept in the story of goose and the golden egg. In an independent, interdependent situation, the golden eggs are effectiveness, wonderful synergy, the results we created by open communication and positive interaction with others. And to get those eggs on regular basis, we need to take care of the goose. We need to create and care for the relationships that make those results realities. So before we descend from a point of recog- reconnaissance and to get into habit of 456, I would like to introduce what I believe to be very powerful metaphor in describing relationships and in defining the P and PC balance and interdependent reality. The emotional bank account. We all know what a financial bank account is. We make deposits into it and build up a reserve from which we can make withdrawals when we need to. An emotional bank account is a metaphor that describes the amount of trust that's been built up in a relationship. It's the feeling of safeness you have with another human being. Oh gosh. if I make a deep if I make deposits into an emotional bank account with you through courtesy, kindness, honesty, and keeping my commitments to you, I build up a reserve. You your trust towards me becomes higher, and I can call upon that trust many times if I need to. I can even make mistakes, and that trust level, that emotional reserve, will compensate for it. My communication may not be clear, but you will get my meaning anyway. You won't make me an offender for a word. When the trust account is high, communication is easy, instant, and effective. But if I have a habit of showing discourtesy, disrespect, cutting you off, overreacting, ignoring you, become arbitrary, betraying your trust, threatening you, or playing little tin god in your life, eventually my emotional bank account is overdrawn. My trust levels gets very low. And then what flexibility do I have? None. I'm walking on minefields. I have to be very careful of everything I say. I measure every word. It's tension city memo heaven. It's protecting my backside politicking. And many organizations are filled with it. Many families are filled with it. Many marriages are filled with it. If a large reserve for trust is not sustained by continuing deposits, a marriage will deteriorate. Sorry, I have to take this. If a large reserve of trust is not sustained by continuing deposit, a marriage will deteriorate. Instead of rich, spontaneous understanding and communication, the situation becomes one of accommodation, where people simply attempt to live independent lifestyles in a fairly respectful and tolerant way. The relationship may further deteriorate to one of hostility and defensiveness. The the fight or flight response creates verbal battles, slam doors, refusal to talk, emotional withdrawal, and self pity. It may end up in a cold war at home, sustained only by children, sex, or social pressure or image protection. Or it may end up in an open warfare in the courts where bitter ego destroying lethal battles can be carried on for years as people endlessly confess sins of a former spouse. And this is the most intimate, most potentially rich, joyful, satisfying, and productive relationship possible between two people on this earth. The P and PC lighthouse is there. We can either break ourselves against it or we can use it as a guiding light. Our most constant relationships, like marriage, require most constant deposits. With continuing expectations, old deposit evaporate. If you suddenly run into an old high school friend you haven't seen for years, you can pick up right where you left off because the earlier deposits are still there. But your account with the people you interact with on regular basis require more constant investment. There are sometimes automatic withdrawals in your daily interactions or in your perception of you or you don't even know about. This is especially true with teenagers in the home. Suppose you have a teenage son and your normal conversation is something like clean your room, button your shirt, turn down the radio, go get a haircut, don't forget to take out your garbage. Over a period of time, the withdrawals far exceed the deposit. Now, suppose this son is in the process of making some important decisions that will affect the rest of his life. But the trust level is so low and the communication process so closed, mechanical, and unsatisfying that he simply will not be open to your counsel. You may have the wisdom and knowledge to help him, but because your account is overdrawn, he will end up making his decisions from short range emotional perspective. You need a positive balance to communicate on these tender issues. What do you do? What would happen if you started making deposits into the relationship? Maybe the opportunity comes up to do with a little kindness, to bring home a magazine or skateboarding, if that's his interest, or just to walk up to him when he's working on a project, offer to help. Perhaps you could invite him to go to a movie with you and take him out for ice cream. Probably the most important deposit you could make would be just to listen without judging or preaching or reading your own autobiography into what he says. Just listen and seek to understand. Let him make feel your concern for him, your acceptance of him as a person. He may not respond at first. He may even be suspicious. What's dad up to now? What technique is mom trying on me this time? But on those genuine deposits keep coming, they begin to add up. That overdrawn balance is shrinking. Remember that quick fix is a mirage. Building and repairing relationship takes time. If you become impatient with the apparent lack of response or his seeming ingratitude to you, you may make huge withdrawals and undo all good you have done. After all we have done for you, the sacrifice we have made, how can you be so ungrateful? We try to be nice and you act like this. I can't believe it. It's hard not to get impatient. It takes character to be proactive, to focus on your circle of influence, to nurture growing things and not to pull up the flowers to see how roots are coming. But there really is no quick fix. Building and repairing relationship are long-term investment. Six major deposits. Let me suggest six major deposits that build their emotional bank account. Oh my God, I'm loving the chapter. Gaurav, how you feeling about it?
Yes, also I'm liking it. I want to know what are the six major deposits.
Number one, understanding the individual. Really seeking to understand another person is probably one of the most important deposits you can make. And it is the key to every other deposit. You simply don't know what constitutes a deposit to another person until you understand that individual. What might be a deposit for you, going for a walk to talk things over, going out for ice cream together, working on a common project, might not be perceived by someone else as a deposit at all. It might even be perceived as withdrawal if it doesn't touch the person's deep interest or needs. One person's mission is another person's minutiae. To make a deposit, what is important to another person must be as important to you as another person is to you. You may be working on high priority project when your 6-year old child interrupts with something that seems trivial to you, but it may be very important from his point of view. It takes habit two to recognize and recommit yourself to the value of the person, and habit three to subordinate your schedule to that human priority. Are you understanding? It takes habit two to recognize and
Hmm.
recommit yourself to the value of that person.
Hmm. Hmm.
So अगर आप compassionate हो, honest हो, empathy हो, love हो, kindness हो, तो you will be able to recognize the value of another person. आप अपनी दुनिया में घूमे हुए नहीं होगे.
Hmm.
अपने अंदर डायलॉग चलता है दिमाग में, उसमें घूमे भी नहीं होंगे. मैं कैसा
Hmm.
लग रहा हूँ, सामने वाला मेरे बारे में क्या सोच रहा है, मैं ऐसा थोड़ी हूँ. उन सब से बाहर निकल के आप उसकी वैल्यू देख पाओगे जब हैबिट नंबर 2 प्रैक्टिस करोगे, राइट?
Hmm.
And habit 3 is to subordinate your schedule to that human priority, because
Hmm.
अपन ने जो वीकली शेड्यूलिंग सीखी वो टाइम मैनेजमेंट के ऊपर नहीं थी, वो
हम्म
वैल्यू मैनेजमेंट के ऊपर थी. व्हाट इज द
हम्म
प्रायोरिटी, व्हाट इज द
हम्म
गोल? By accepting the value he places on what he has to say, you show an understanding of him that makes a great deposit. My I have a friend whose son developed an avid interest in baseball. My friend wasn't interested in baseball at all. But one summer he took his son to see every major league team play on one game. And the trip took over 6 weeks and cost a great deal of money, but it became powerful bonding experience in their relationship. My friend was asked on his return, "Do you like a baseball match that much?" "No," he replied, "but I like my son that much." I have another friend, a college professor, who had a terrible relationship with his teenage son. His man entire life was essentially academic, and he felt his son was totally wasting his life by working with his hands instead of working to develop his mind. As a result, he was almost constantly on his boy's back. In moments of regret, he would try to make deposit that just didn't work. The boy perceived gestures as a form of rejection, comparison, judgment, and they precipitated huge withdrawals. I think Anishka just joined, right? No, Ankit has joined, and Manojji has joined. So for you, let me create the background. We are talking about the relationships here, and ये बोल रहा है रिलेशनशिप आप अपनी पर्सनैलिटी से नहीं बना सकते. Relationship is 100% based on the trust account. हेलो मनोज. सो जैसे अपन फाइनेंशियल अकाउंट होता है वैसे अपना रिलेशनशिप का इमोशनल बैंक अकाउंट होता है. तो इमोशनल बैंक अकाउंट जैसे मैरिज है या कोई भी रिलेशनशिप है जो आप डेली बेसिस पे इंटरेक्ट करते हैं, तो उसमें अपन को कांस्टेंट अपन को डिपॉजिट्स करने पड़ते हैं. वी जस्ट कांट टेक विड्रॉल्स इमोशनली, एंड वो सब कुछ डिपेंड होता है ऑन द ट्रस्ट. So emotional bank account is a metaphor that describes the amount of trust that's been built up in a relationship. It's a feeling of safeness you have with another human being, right? अब अपन पढ़ रहे हैं कि जो ये इमोशनल बैंक अकाउंट है इसमें 6 मेजर डिपॉजिट्स होते हैं. नंबर 1 डिपॉजिट होता है अंडरस्टैंडिंग द इंडिविजुअल. अब हर इंडिविजुअल की अलग वैल्यूज होती है. अगर आपको लगता है कि मैं उसको ये दे दूं, पर इट्स नॉट अबाउट व्हाट यू वांट टू गिव. यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड सामने वाले के लिए क्या वैल्यूएबल है, और वो अंडरस्टैंड करना इज एन इमोशनल डिपॉजिट. तो इसमें एग्जांपल दिया है कि है ना, एक बेसबॉल, उसके सन को बेसबॉल पसंद था पर उसके फादर को बेसबॉल में कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं था, तो भी वो है ना सारे मैचेस बेसबॉल के देखने गया. क्यों? क्योंकि उसने कहा आई लाइक माई सन दैट मच. सो इट्स नॉट अबाउट यू, बट इट्स अबाउट आप जिससे रिलेशनशिप डेवलप करना चाह रहे हो, तो उसमें आपने डिपॉजिट कितना किया, मतलब आपने रिलेशनशिप पे कितना काम किया, और रिलेशनशिप में भी कैसा उस बंदे के लिए जो चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है आपने उसमें उसकी कितनी डिपॉजिट्स किए. The golden rule says to do unto others as you have others do unto you. While on the surface, that could mean to do for them what you would like to have done for you. I think the more essential meaning is to understand them deeply as individuals, the way you would want to be understood, and then to treat them in terms of that understanding. As one successful parent said about raising children, treat them all the same but treating them differently. हर बंदे को अलग तरह से ट्रीट करो, उसकी वैल्यूज को समझने की कोशिश करो, और उसको वैल्यूज में उसको क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है उसमें आप उसको समझोगे तो वो आप ट्रस्ट बिल्ड करोगे. If they don't interrupt our effort as a deposit, our tendency is to take it as a rejection of our well intentioned effort and to give up. ये बोल रहा है कि जो अपना डिपॉजिट होता है वो अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग, अपनी नीड्स एंड डिजायर के बेसिस पे होता है. व्हेन वी वर एट द सिमिलर एज, तो टीनेजर को क्या डिमांड और डिजायर होगी, उसकी क्या नीड्स होगी ना, उस बेसिस पे आप ट्रस्ट डेवलप कर सकते हो, नॉट ऑन व्हाट यू वांट टू गिव एज अ पेरेंट. Attending to the little things, the little kindness and courtesies are so important. Small discourtesies, little unkindness, little form of disrespect make large withdrawals. ये बोल रहा है small discourtesies, little unkindness and little form of disrespect makes large withdrawals. In relationship, little things are the big things. I remember an evening I spent with yes, Gaurav.
माने इट इज अ वेरी सिंपल थिंग रिचा कि अपने एक जन का अगर छोटा छोटा चीज को ध्यान रखेंगे देन दैट विल कीप ऑन गिविंग अस
बस
अ
वो
बिग
मैडम ने आपको
डिपॉजिट्स.
भेजा है सब, अभी आप फाइनल में करके बता दीजिए क्या.
So that will give us big deposits. And अगर स्मॉल स्मॉल चीज का ध्यान नहीं रखेंगे तो वो विड्रॉल
अरे सर
होते
वो
रहेगा.
सैंक्शन आ गया है तो खाली टाइम
Manoj
पास है.
ji, please,
आपका
please
एनओसी कब आ
mute
जाएगा
yourself.
सोसाइटी का?
Manoj ji, mute yourself.
ओके ओके.
म्यूट कर लीजिए खुद को एक बार. आपका म्यूट नहीं हुआ मनोज जी अभी भी.
तो मंडे को क्लोज करने का टारगेट रखते हैं.
मनोज जी आप खुद को म्यूट कर लीजिए ना प्लीज. म्यूट कर लो, आपके पास ऑप्शन होता है म्यूट कर सकते हो आप खुद को.
यस यस मैडम करता हूँ.
Yes, attending to the little things. First was to understanding the individual. Second was to attending to the little things. छोटी छोटी चीजें बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है. जैसे मुझे पर्सनली लगता है, और ये फैक्ट है जो मेरे को लगता है ना, जो ट्रस्ट, छोटी छोटी चीजें होती है यार, वो बहुत इम्पैक्ट कर जाती है. जैसे मेरी मम्मी मुझे बहुत प्यार करती है, 100% करती होगी, पर बचपन में ना उनने मेरी छोटी छोटी चीजें, जैसे उनने मुझसे रिस्पेक्टफुली बात नहीं की, उनने मुझे किस नहीं किया, उनने मुझे हग नहीं किया, बहुत छोटी चीज है, पर वो मेरे जहन में बैठ गई कि यार मम्मी तो कभी मुझे एज अ बेबी ट्रीट ही नहीं करती, वो मुझे प्यार ही नहीं करती. राइट, बहुत छोटी चीज है. ऑफ कोर्स शी लव्स मी लाइक एनीथिंग. उनने she made sure I have the best education, and that's why I have so much love for education. And I think I started loving book reading का concept मेरी मम्मा ने मुझे as a teenager introduce करा दिया था. Right, so she has done a very big things for me in my life. पर छोटी छोटी चीजें से आज तक है कि उनने मुझे इससे मारा उससे मारा, वो मुझे डांटती रहती थी, बहुत छोटी चीज है. She never used to understand me as a kid, and she never supported me emotionally as a kid. बहुत छोटी चीज है, पर वो मेरे को साला अभी तक मैं उसकी हीलिंग कर रही हूँ, and forgiving कर रही हूँ, let go कर रही हूँ, and I'm recreating that no, my mom loves me. I have a very good relationship with her in the present moment, but मेरी जो inner child healing है वो मैं अभी तक कर रही हूँ. क्यों? क्योंकि वो मेरे को ऐसा लगता है कि मैंने बचपन में छोटी छोटी चीजों को लेकर ना कंप्लेन्स कर ली थी कि मम्मा ने ये नहीं किया, वो नहीं किया. I remember an evening I spent with two of my sons some years ago. It was an organized father and son outing, complete with gymnastics, wrestling matches, hot dogs, this and that. In middle of movie scene, who was then 4 years old, fell asleep in his seat. His older brother Stephen, who was 6, stayed awake, and he watched the rest of the movie together. When it was over, I picked up Scene up in my arms and carried him out in the car and laid him in the back seat. It was very cold that night, so I took off my coat and gently arranged it over and around him. When we arrived home, I quickly carried Scene in and tucked him into the bed. After Stephen put on his jammies and brushed his teeth, I lay down next to him to talk about the night out together. How did you like it, Stephen? He said, fine, he answered. Did you have fun? Yes. What did you like the most? I don't know. The trampoline, I guess. What was that? Was a quite a thing, wasn't it? Doing those somersaults and tricks in the air like that. There wasn't much response on his part. I found myself making conversation. I wondered why Stephen wouldn't open up more. He usually did when exciting things happened. I was a little disappointed. I sensed something was wrong. He had been so quiet on the way home getting ready for bed. Suddenly, Stephen turned over on his side, facing the wall. I wondered why and lifted myself up against enough to see his eyes welling up with tears. What's wrong, honey? What is it? He turned back, and I could sense he was feeling some embarrassment for the tears on his quivering lips and chin. Daddy, if I were cold, would you put your coat around me too? बहुत छोटी सी चीज है राइट वो पूरे दिन अपने सन के साथ बाहर था of all the events of that special night out together, the most important was a little kind of act of kindness, a momentary, unconscious showing of love to his little brother. What a powerful personal lesson that experience was to me then and is even now. People are very tender, very sensitive inside. I don't believe age or experience makes much a difference. Inside, even within the most toughened and calloused exteriors, are the tender feelings and emotions of the heart. Keeping commitments. Keeping a commitment or a promise is a major deposit. मैं तो खो गई यार मुझसे तो आगे पढ़ा ही नहीं जा रहा oh shit I am overwhelmed it's
Yeah,
very
me
heart
too.
touching
Yes.
very heart touching.
Hmm.
Keeping commitments. Keeping a commitment or a promise is a major deposit. Breaking one is a major withdrawal. In fact,
Richa, do you want to continue tomorrow?
you
In
don't want to
case,
read
no,
ahead.
I want to, but in case you're feeling emotional,
No, but the
that
thing
is
is,
right.
this is something to take
Yeah.
away in life. I'm reading it. It's the second time. I don't know how I missed it the first time in the book reading.
Okay.
I just didn't get it to the level I got it today. But I don't know how to. मतलब, I'm not still present. कि मैं मेरी life में attending to the little things कहाँ कर रही हूँ कहाँ नहीं कर रही
Hmm.
and understanding the other person also.
Hmm. Hmm.
उसकी क्या values है not what you are giving उसकी क्या values है बड़ा tough है यार ये करना not easy emotional bank account. Keeping a commitment or a promise is a major deposit. Breaking one is a major withdrawal. In fact, there is probably not a more massive withdrawal than to make a promise that's not important to someone and then not to come through. The next time a promise is made, they won't believe it. People tend to build their hopes around promises, and particularly promises about their basic livelihood. I tried to adopt a philosophy as a parent never to make a promise I don't keep. I therefore try to make them very carefully, very sparingly, and to be aware of as many variables and contingencies as possible so that something doesn't suddenly come up to keep me from fulfilling it. Occasionally, despite all my efforts, the unexpected does come up, creating a situation where it would be unwise or impossible to keep a promise I've made. But I value that promise. I either keep it anyway or explain the situation thoroughly to the person involved and ask to be released from the promise. I believe that if you cultivate the habit of always keeping the promises you make, you build bridges of trust that span the gaps of understanding between you and your children. And then when your child wants to do something you don't want him to do, or out of your maturity, you can see consequences that the child cannot see. You can say, son, if you do this, I promise you that this will be the result. If that child has cultivated trust in your word, in your promises, he will act on your counsel. Clarifying expectations is also a part of emotional bank account. Keeping commitments, attending to the little things, and understanding the person. And fourth one is clarifying expectations. Imagine the difficulty you might encounter if you and your boss had different assumptions regarding whose role it was to create your job description. When I'm going to get my job description, you might ask, I've been waiting for you to bring one to me so we could discuss it. The boss might reply, I thought defining my job was your role. That's not my role at all. Don't you remember? Right from the first, I said how you do in the job largely depends on you. So you have to clear the expectations. Unclear expectations in the area of goals also undermine communication and trust. I did exactly what you asked me to do, and here is the report. I don't want a report. The goal was to solve the problem, not to analyze it and report it to me. I thought the goal was to get the handle on the problem so that we could delegate it to someone else. How many times have we had these kind of conversation? You said, no, you are wrong. I said, you did not. You never said I was supposed to. Oh, I did. I clearly said. Any which way, the cause of almost all relationship difficulty is rooted in the conflicting, ambiguous expectation around roles and goals. Whether we are dealing with the question of who does what a work, how you communicate with your daughter when you tell her to clean her room, who feeds the fish and takes out the garbage, we can be certain that the unclear expectation will lead to misunderstanding, disappointment, and withdrawals of trust. Many expectations are implicit. They haven't been explicitly stated or announced, but people nevertheless bring them to a particular situation. In marriage, for an example, a man and a woman have implicit expectation of each other in their marriage roles. Although these expectations have not been discussed, sometimes even recognized by the person who has had them, fulfilling them makes them a great deposit in the relationship, and violating them makes great withdrawals. That's why it's so important whenever you come into a new situation to get all your expectations out on the table. People will begin to judge each other through those expectations. And if they feel like their basic expectations have been violated, the reserve or trust is diminished. We create many negative situations by simply assuming that our expectations are self-evident and they are clearly understood and shared by other people. The deposit is to make the expectations clear and explicit in the beginning. This takes a real investment of time and effort upfront, but it saves great amount of time and effort down the road. Clarifying expectations sometimes take a great deal of courage. It seems easier to act though differences don't exist, to hope things will work out than it is to face the differences and work together to arrive at a mutually agreeable set of expectations. Showing personal integrity. Personal integrity generates trust and is the basis of many different kinds of deposit. Lack of integrity can undermine almost any other effort to create high trust accounts. People can seek to understand, remember the little things, keep their promises, clarify and fulfill expectations, and still fail to build results of trust if they are inwardly duplicitous. Integrity includes but goes beyond honesty. Integrity includes but goes beyond honesty. Honesty is telling the truth. In other words, conforming our words to reality. Integrity is conforming reality to our words. In other words, keeping promises and fulfilling expectations. This requires an integrated character, a oneness, a primarily with self, but also with life. One of the most important ways to manifest integrity is to be loyal to those who are not present. In doing so, we build the trust of those who are present. And when you defend those who are absent, you retain the trust of those present. Should I read it again? One of the most important ways to manifest integrity is to be loyal to those who are not present. In doing so, we build the trust of those who are present. मतलब आप जिनके साथ हो और जो लोग नहीं है उनकी बैक बिचिंग मत करो. बैक बिचिंग करोगे तो आज जो प्रेजेंट है ना आप उनका ट्रस्ट भी खो दोगे. Suppose you and I were talking alone and we were criticizing a supervisor in a way that we would not dare to do if he were present. Now, what will happen when you and I have a falling out? You know, I'm going to be discussing your weaknesses with someone else. That's what you and I did behind our supervisor's back. You know my nature. I will sweet talk to you to your face, but bad mouth you behind your back. You have seen me do it. That's the essence of duplicity. Does that build a reserve of trust in my account with you? On the other hand, suppose you were to start criticizing your supervisor and I basically told you I agree with the consent of some of the criticism and suggest that two of us go directly to him and make an effective presentation on how things might be improved. Then what would you know I would do if someone were to criticize you to me behind your back? On for another example, suppose in my effort to build a relationship with you I told you something someone else had shared with me in confidence. I really shouldn't tell you this, I might say, but since you are my friend, this. Would you trust? Such duplicity might appear to be making a deposit with the person you are with, but it is actually a withdrawal because you communicate your own lack of integrity. You may get the golden egg of temporary pleasure from putting someone down or sharing privileged information, but you are straggling the goose,
Because
weakening the relationship that provides enduring pleasure in association. Integrity is an interdependent reality, is simply this: you treat everyone by the same set of principles. Integrity in an interdependent reality is simply this: you treat everyone by the same set of principles. As you do, people will come to trust you. They may not at first appreciate the honest confrontational experiences such as integrity might generate. Confrontation takes considerable courage, and many people would prefer to take the course of least resistance, belittling and criticizing, betraying confidence, and participating in gossip with others behind their back. But in the long run, people will trust and respect you if you are honest and open and kind with them. You care enough to confront and to be trusted. It is said, it is greater than to be loved. In the long run, I am convinced to be trusted is also to be loved. When my son Joshua was quite young, he would frequently ask me a soul searching question. Whenever I overreacted to someone else or was in least impatient or unkind, he was so vulnerable and so honest, and our relationship was so good that he would simply look in me and I and said, "Dad, do you love me?" If he thought I was breaking a basic principle of life towards someone else, he wondered if I wouldn't break it with him. As a teacher as well as parent, have found that the key to 99 is one, particularly the one that is testing the patience and the good humor of the many. It is the love and discipline of one student, one child, that communicates love for others. It's how you treat the one that reveals how you regard 99, because everyone is ultimately a one. आप किसी एक इंसान को जिस तरह से ट्रीट करते हो आप उसी तरह से हर इंसान को ट्रीट करते हो. Integrity also means avoiding any communication that is deceptive, full of guile, beneath the dignity of people. A lie is any communication with the intent to deceive, according to one definition of the word. Whether we communicate with words or behavior, if we have integrity, our intent cannot be deceived. Apologizing sincerely when you make a withdrawal. When we make withdrawals from emotional bank account, we need to apologize and we need to do it sincerely. Great deposit come in sincere words. I was wrong. That was unkind of me. I showed you no respect. I gave you no dignity. And I'm deeply sorry. I'm embarrassed you in front of your friends and had no call to do that. Even though I wanted to make a point and never should have done it, I apologize. It takes a great deal of character strength to apologize quickly out of one heart rather than out of pity. A person must possess himself and have a deep sense of security in fundamental principles and values in order to genuinely apologize. People with little internal security can't do that. It makes them too vulnerable. They feel it makes them appear soft and weak. They fear that others will take advantage of their weakness. The security is based on the opinions of other people, and they worry about what others might think. In addition, they usually feel justified in what they did. They rationalize their own wrongdoing in the name of others person's wrong, and they apologize at all. It is superficial. If you're going to bow low, says Eastern wisdom. Pay the uttermost farthing, says the Christian ethic. To be a deposit, an apology must be sincere, and it must be perceived as sincere. It is the weak who are cruel. Gentleness can only be expected from the strong. It is the weak who are cruel. Gentleness can only be expected from the strong. ये एग्जाम्पल पढ़ूं क्या स्किप कर दूं?
You can skip it because the basic जो ये emotional bank account का है, this is very very strong and very clear.
The laws of love and the laws of life. ये लास्ट लाइन पढ़ लेती हूँ इसकी. It is one thing to make a mistake and quite another thing not to admit it. People will forgive mistakes because mistakes are usually of the mind, mistakes of judgment. But people will not easily forgive the mistakes of heart, the ill intention, the bad motives, the prideful justifying cover ups of the first mistake. The laws of love and the laws of life. When we make deposits of unconditional love, when we live the primary laws of love, we encourage others to live the primary laws of love. In other words, when we truly love others without condition, without strings, we help them feel secure and safe and validated and affirmed in their essential worth, identity, and integrity. The natural growth process is encouraged. We make it easier for them to live the laws of life, cooperation, contribution, self discipline, integrity, and to discover and live true to the highest and best within them. We give them the freedom to act on their own inner imperatives rather than react to our conditions and limitations. This does not mean we become permissive or soft. That itself is a massive withdrawal. We counsel, we plead, we set limits and consequences, but we love regardless. When we violate the primary laws of love, which is when we attach the strings and conditions to the gifts, we actually encourage others to violate the primary laws of life. We put them in a reactive, defensive position where they feel they have to prove I matter as a person independent of you. In reality, they aren't independent. They are counter dependent, which is another form of dependency. ये बोल रहा है रिएक्टिव एंड एनिमी सेंटर जब भी होता है जब एक्सपेक्टेशंस अपन अटैच कर देते हैं. They are about proactively listening and honoring their own inner imperatives. Rebellion is a knot of the heart, not of the mind. The key is to make deposit, constant deposit of unconditional love. The six major deposit that build emotional bank account, understanding the individual. One of the most important deposit you can make is the key to every other deposit. To make a deposit, what is important is to another person must be important to you. Always accept the value of what the other person says. Attending to the little things. In relationship, the little things are the big things. Inside, even with the most toughened exteriors, the tender feeling and emotions of the heart are hidden. Keeping commitments. A promise is a major deposit, breaking one is a major withdrawal. Clarifying expectations. Clarifying expectations sometimes take a great deal of courage. Showing personal integrity. Showing personal integrity generates trust, which is the basis of deposit. Integrity includes but goes beyond honesty. One of the most important ways to manifest integrity is to be loyal to those who are not present. The laws of love and the laws of life. When we make deposit of unconditional love, when we live the primary laws of love, we encourage others to live the primary laws of love. मैं ये skip कर रही हूँ. It is more noble to give yourself completely to one individual than to labor diligently for the salvation of the masses. P problems are PC opportunities. अब मैं ये कल cover कर लूंगी. The habits of
Yes.
independence.
Yes. Okay.
Win-win negotiation techniques or reflective listening techniques or creative problem-solving techniques that focus on personality and truncate the vital character base. ये वही बोल रहा है कि it is the base, it's who you are, which matters. People are not dumb. Everybody can see through each one of us. मैं आज जो हूँ, मैं कुछ भी ऊपर से बोलूं, आप मेरे कोर को ज्यादा पहचान पाओगे. एज अ थर्ड पर्सन अपन सामने वाले के अंदर तक का देख पाते हैं, जो शायद इंसान खुद भी नहीं देख पाता. अगर आज मैं ढोंग कर रही हूँ, कुछ प्रिटेंड कर रही हूँ, कुछ शो ऑफ कर रही हूँ, तो यू विल बी एबल टू मेक आउट शी इज शोइंग ऑफ, शी इज प्रिटेंडिंग, राइट?
Yes.
सामने वाले को ज्यादा दिखता है.
Yes.
If the other person is honest and authentic and transparent, वो सामने वाले को इतना strongly communicate होता है, which is like anything.
And plus आज का जो अपने emotional bank account ये है, it is so true in life, in all the relations that we have, especially in marriage.
Principles of life.
These are the principles. Yeah.
Marriage, children, parents, colleagues, office, employees, सब जगह
Of
यही.
course.
Okay, thank you. See you tomorrow.
Right, Richard. Tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.